I met her on a Tuesday that felt like a Monday. Austin heat was already sitting heavy on the streets, and the air smelled like dust and tacos, the usual mix you get around South Congress. I've been running late to a meeting at a co-working space downtown, my shirt half tucked, one headphone in, and coffee spilling on my hand. And then, in that chaos, I saw her. She was standing outside Joe's Coffee, wearing this loose denim jacket over a sundress, her hair catching the light like it was made of something the sun wanted to hold on to. I didn't even realize I'd stopped walking until someone bumped into me from behind. She turned slightly, noticed me staring, and smiled. Just a small, polite smile. But it hit like a slow, quiet punch. Not the kind that hurts, but the kind that makes you forget what you were about to say. That I don't know what it was about her. Maybe it was how calm she looked, sipping iced coffee like she wasn't in a hurry to be anywhere. Maybe it was how she seemed completely in the moment. Something I hadn't felt in years that I didn't talk to her that day. I just kept walking, pretending like I didn't care, but thinking about her for the rest of the week. That a week later, I saw her again. This time at a local open mic night on E60 that I'd gone there with a couple friends from work. I wasn't planning to stay long. We'd had a rough week on a project, and I just wanted a beer and maybe some live music to drown out my thoughts. And then she walked on stage to, intro, no name drop, just her and a guitar that looked older than both of us. She played a song I'd never heard before, soft, simple, and beautiful in a way that made people stop mid-conversation. Her voice wasn't perfect. It cracked in places, but the cracks made it real. And when she finished, I swear the whole room just breathed again. After the set, I found her by the bar, tuning her guitar, and before I could overthink it, I said, "You were amazing." She looked up, smiled. That same small smile from Joe's Coffee. "Thanks," she said. "I don't usually play here." "I'm glad you did," I replied, probably sounding way too earnest. She laughed, light and quiet. "I'm Lila." "Evan," I said, shaking her hand. Her fingers were cool and soft, the kind of touch that lingers. After that night, Lila and I started talking. First casually, then constantly. Texting turned into late-night drives. Drives turned into early breakfasts at Magnolia Cafe. And soon, she was just there in my days, in my playlists, in my head. She wasn't like anyone I'd met before. She wasn't chasing something. Not money, not status. She worked part-time at a bookstore near UT, painted on weekends, and sang when she felt like it. Her life wasn't perfect. She didn't even have a car, just an old bike with a rusted chain, but she seemed content. I envied that. She said I reminded her of someone who tries too hard to look okay. She wasn't wrong that I'd moved to Austin from Dallas 2 years earlier, after my last relationship ended in a way that left me feeling like everything was both my fault and completely out of my control. I was trying to rebuild, new city, new job, new everything, but some nights it still felt like I'd packed my old ghosts in the same boxes as my dishes. And then there was Lila. Unpredictable, grounding, the kind of person who made ordinary days feel cinematic. That we spent that summer wrapped in long drives and cheap wine. Sometimes we'd park by Lady Bird Lake, sitting on the hood of my car, watching the skyline reflect on the water. Lila would talk about music, about wanting to record an EP. Someday, about leaving Austin just for a while to see what else was out there. I didn't tell her that the idea of her leaving already made my chest ache. Instead, I just listened, memorizing the way her voice dipped when she got tired, or how she'd tap her fingers on my knee when she was lost in thought. Point one night, she asked, "Do you ever feel like you're supposed to be somewhere else?" "Sometimes," I said, "but I never know where that is." She nodded, looking at the city lights. "Maybe it's not a place. Maybe it's a person." I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because for the first time in a long time, I thought maybe she was right. By the time October came, everything between us felt both easy and fragile, like we were standing on something beautiful that could break if either of us breathed too hard. Austin was cooler, softer. The air smelled like rain and pecan pie, and the trees along Zilker Park had started to turn amber. Lila and I had fallen into this quiet rhythm. Weekdays apart, weekends together. She'd show up at my place with paint on her hands and that little smile, like she'd been somewhere far away but was glad to be back. But I'd started noticing things. Small things. She'd stare at her phone a little too long sometimes. Her expression unreadable. She'd go quiet mid-conversation, like she was somewhere else entirely. And when I asked if everything was okay, she'd just say, "Yeah, just tired. I believed her. Or maybe I wanted a point one night. After she'd fallen asleep beside me, I lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about how love isn't always a constant. It's a rhythm, and sometimes one person starts to drift offbeat without realizing it. We were sitting at a small bar on East Cesar Chavez when she told me she'd been offered a spot in an artist residency program in Portland. It's only for a few months, she said, but it's kind of a big deal. I tried to smile. That's amazing, Lila. She looked at me carefully, like she was trying to read something on my face. You mean that? I do, I said. And I did. I really did. But underneath that, there was something else, a quiet, selfish ache. The thing about people like her is they don't belong to one place. They move like seasons. You don't own them. You just get to feel them for a while. When we got back to my apartment, she leaned against the counter, eyes tired but warm. Would you miss me? She asked. I already do, I said. And she kissed me like she wanted to remember what we felt like before we had to let go to. In the weeks leading up to her trip, everything slowed down that we still saw each other, still laughed, still pretended that. A few months wasn't going to change everything, but it already was that we'd be driving down Congress, music low, her hand resting on mine, and I'd catch her looking out the window, lost somewhere I couldn't follow. And I'd wonder, was she already half gone? One night, she said, promise me you'll keep living while I'm gone. Don't wait for me. I smiled. You don't get to tell me what to do. I'm serious, Evan. I know, I said quietly, but I didn't mean it, because deep down, I knew waiting was all I'd do. She left on a gray Sunday morning in November. We stood in the parking lot outside her apartment, the smell of wet pavement around us. Her suitcase was small. She'd always been light on things, heavy on meaning. I'll call when I get there, she said. Okay. I mean it. I know. We just stood there for a while, not touching, just looking. There's a kind of silence that only happens when two people are trying to memorize each other. When she finally hugged me, it was quick, too quick, and then she was gone. Did I watch her drive away until the car disappeared down the street? The world didn't end. The city didn't fall apart, but something small and quiet inside me did. The first week without her felt like missing a step on the stairs every morning. Her toothbrush was still in my bathroom. Her favorite mug still in the cabinet. Everything was still where she left it, except her. Work became mechanical. Friend tried to pull me out. Bars, concerts, random plans, but nothing really landed. Even music sounded different. Teen-eyed, I'd walk by the lake where we used to sit, and I'd catch myself looking at the reflection of the skyline. That same skyline we used to talk about like it was ours. She called a few times, sent photos, rainy streets. Her new studio, a self-portrait, she said, was ugly but honest. She sounded happy, and I was happy for her. At least that's what I told myself. That IT was January when she called me late one night. Hey, she said, you awake? I am now. I've been thinking about you. Silence. The kind of silence that fills every corner of a room. Then she said, it's weird. I like it here, but I miss Austin. She stopped. Me? I asked, half smiling in the dark. She laughed softly. Yeah, you. We didn't say much after that. Just breathing on the line. Both of us knowing this didn't change anything. But it still meant something. She came back in late March that I found out not from her, but from a mutual friend who saw her at a farmer's market near South Congress. Thought you knew. They said I didn't. That night, I texted her just 2 words. You're back? She replied almost an hour later. Yeah, just got in a few days ago. You want to grab coffee sometime? I typed, but then I erased it. Instead, I sent, glad you're home. She sent back a single heart emoji, and somehow that hurt more than silence. A week later, we ran into each other, by accident or fate, at Book People, the same bookstore where she used to work. She was in the poetry section, holding a copy of Mary Oliver. When she saw me, she smiled, the kind of smile that was both familiar and distant. Hey, she said softly. Hey. We stood there, surrounded by quiet pages and the smell of old paper. She looked the same, maybe a little thinner, her hair shorter, eyes calmer. You look good, I said. So do you. We talked for a while, small things, safe things, her time in Portland, how the residency went, how she almost stayed but didn't. When we stepped outside, the sun was setting behind the skyline, and for a second, It felt like nothing had changed. Then she said, "Can I tell you something?" "Always. I thought about you. A lot." And there was the sentence that pulls the floor out from under you that we started seeing each other again, cautiously at first. Coffee runs, walks around the lake. Conversations that stretched until midnight, but never crossed the line back into us. She was different, quieter, maybe more grounded. And I realized that somewhere between leaving and returning, she'd learned to be okay without me. I wanted to be happy for her. And part of me was. But another part kept reaching for something that no longer existed. One night, we were sitting in my car, parked outside her apartment. She said, "You ever feel like we were almost something great?" I looked at her, the way the light from the street painted her face in fragments. "Yeah," I said. "Almost." Spring turned to summer again, that we fell into old habits, talking late, showing up unannounced, pretending we weren't slipping back into what we'd promised to outgrow. But something unspoken hovered between us, a quiet awareness that love, once broken, never fits the same way twice. One night, I asked her, "Why do you really come back?" She hesitated, "Because I wanted to see if it still felt like home." "And does it?" "I don't know yet." I nodded. Maybe we're both just visiting old places, hoping they still remember us. She looked at me, really looked, and whispered, "Maybe." It was late June when she came over with a bottle of cheap wine and that record she used to love, Phoebe Bridgers' Punisher. We sat on the floor, laughing at nothing, remembering everything to some point. The laughter faded, and we just sat there, her leaning against me, my fingers tracing the edge of her sleeve. "I missed this," she said quietly. "I missed you." She turned, eyes soft, uncertain. For a second, I thought she'd kiss me. But she didn't. She just said, "Don't make this harder than it has to be." And somehow, that was the most honest thing either of us had said all night. A week later, she told me she was moving again. Not far, just to San Antonio, for a job in an art studio. "Only an hour away," she said, trying to sound casual. That I smiled. "Yeah, that's nothing." But we both knew it was something. That we met one last time before she left. Same spot by Lady Bird Lake, the skyline glowing in the distance. She brought her guitar, played a song she said she wrote in Portland. It was about leaving, but not losing. About remembering, but not holding on. When she finished, she said, "I think I'm supposed to go, but I don't want you to think I'm running." "I know," I said. "You'll be okay?" "Yeah," I lied. She smiled, tears catching in the light. "You always were bad at lying." We hugged, longer than before. No promises. No declarations. Just that quiet understanding that sometimes love doesn't end. It just changes shape. That it's been months since she left again. Austin feels different now. Not empty, just slower. Sometimes I walk past Joe's Coffee and still half expect to see her there. Denim jacket, iced coffee, sun in her hair. That I don't. But I still look. That I've started painting again. Something I picked up from her. Most of the time, I don't know what I'm painting until it's done. But somehow, every brushstroke feels like a conversation we never finished. People say time heals everything. That I don't think that's true. That I think time just teaches you to live with the ache, to carry it without letting it crush you. Last week, she texted me a photo, a sunrise from San Antonio. Below it, just one line, "You like the light here." And I did what I always do, smiled, then stared at the screen too long, knowing that somewhere between then and now, we became something you don't have words for. Not love, not regret, just something that still breathes quietly somewhere in the middle.